In 1916, Madam C. J. Walker owned the most expensive home ever purchased by a black American. Her mansion in Irvington, on Hudson cost $250,000, an extraordinary sum at the time. She employed a full-time staff of servants and drove a custom electric car. White newspapers described her as the wealthiest black woman in America. 6 months after moving into her estate, Villa Luaro, the local country club rejected her membership application without explanation. The yacht club refused entry to her family. White neighbors circulated petitions demanding that she leave. She was 50 years old, and at the height of her success. Her story reaches far beyond discrimination in the Gilded Age. It reveals how rejection can be transformed into power, and how personal success can be converted into collective progress. The mansion overlooking the Hudson River became more than a symbol of wealth. It became a headquarters for black excellence, strategy, and philanthropy. More than a century later, her legacy continues to inspire entrepreneurs around the world. She was born Sarah Breedlove on December 23, 1867, on a Louisiana cotton plantation. Her parents, Owen and Minerva Breedlove, had been enslaved until emancipation only a few years earlier. She was the first child in her family born into freedom. Yet freedom in Reconstruction-era Louisiana meant poverty, violence, and uncertainty. The family worked as sharecroppers on the same land, where they had once been enslaved, owing a portion of every harvest to the landowner. They lived in a one-room cabin. Sarah slept on a dirt floor and worked in the cotton fields as soon as she was able. By the age of 7, she was an orphan. Yellow fever claimed her mother in 1874, and her father died soon afterward. She moved to Vicksburg, Mississippi, to live with her older sister and brother-in-law, a man she later described as abusive. At 14, she married Moses McWilliams to escape that environment. He was 19. Their daughter Lilia was born in 1885. 2 years later, Moses died under circumstances that were never publicly clarified. Sarah was 20 years old, widowed, and responsible for a small child. In 1889, she moved to St. Louis, where her brothers worked as barbers. She found employment as a washerwoman, scrubbing clothes for white families 6 days a week. The lye soap burned her hands and damaged her skin. She earned around $1.50 per day when work was steady, and that money had to cover rent, food, and her daughter's education. Despite poverty, she insisted that Lilia attend school, determined that her daughter would have opportunities she never experienced. During these difficult years, Sarah began losing her hair. Stress, poor nutrition, and scalp infections contributed to the problem. Black women at the time had few safe hair care options, and many products on the market were harsh and damaging. Determined to find a solution, she experimented with remedies. She later described a dream in which a formula was revealed to her. Whether symbolic or literal, she eventually developed a mixture that included sulfur and conditioning oils. It treated scalp disease and encouraged hair growth. She began selling the product to other black women in St. Louis. The results brought attention. Word spread through churches and social networks. She recognized that mainstream beauty companies ignored black customers, and that an underserved market existed. In 1905, she moved to Denver with only $150 in savings. She worked as a cook by day and sold her products door to door at night, building trust one household at a time. In 1906, she married Charles Joseph Walker, an advertising salesman, and adopted the professional name Madam C.J. Walker. The title suggested sophistication and expertise. With Charles's help in advertising, she expanded her reach. By 1907, she had recruited and trained sales agents known as Walker agents. They demonstrated her system, which included vegetable shampoo, her wonderful hair grower, and the use of heated combs as part of a structured routine. Although she did not invent the straightening comb, she standardized its professional use within a complete hair care system. In 1908, she opened Lelia College in Pittsburgh to train agents not only in product use, but also in business practices, personal presentation, and financial independence. Graduates earned far more than domestic workers and gained a sense of dignity and economic power. By 1910, she relocated her headquarters to Indianapolis, building a factory and establishing the Madame C.J. Walker Manufacturing Company. Her image appeared on every product label. She understood branding before the concept was widely studied. By 1911, she employed more than 1,000 agents across the United States and the Caribbean. Sales exceeded 4,000 per day. She expanded into Cuba, Jamaica, Haiti, and Central America, reaching Black communities wherever they lived. Critics debated the cultural meaning of her products, but her customers embraced the opportunity for health, income, and independence. She traveled extensively, speaking about economic empowerment and racial pride. She encouraged Black women to build businesses, purchase property, and support their communities. Her success demonstrated that wealth and philanthropy could coexist. When she purchased Villa Luoro in Irvington on Hudson, the estate became a gathering place for activists, intellectuals, and leaders working toward racial advancement. Her journey from a Louisiana plantation to international business leadership stands as one of the most powerful entrepreneurial stories in American history. Through resilience, marketing brilliance, and an unwavering belief in the potential of Black women, Madam C.J. Walker built more than a fortune. She built a movement that expanded opportunity for generations to come. Caribbean women had different hair textures, climates, and styling traditions than customers in the United States, and Madam C.J. Walker adjusted her formulas and marketing to meet those needs. She returned home with expanded markets and the reputation of an international businesswoman. By 1913, her wealth had reached extraordinary levels for any woman, especially one born into poverty in the post-Civil War South. Conservative estimates placed her annual income above $100,000, with some accounts suggesting it exceeded or $200,000 a year. At a time when the average American family earned around $800 annually. Walker was accumulating wealth at a pace comparable to leading industrialists. She invested heavily in real estate. In Indianapolis, she purchased property beyond her factory operations. In New York, she acquired a townhouse in Harlem at 136 West 136th Street, positioning herself within what was rapidly becoming the center of Black cultural life in America. She wanted to stand at the heart of that transformation. At the same time, she envisioned something even more ambitious: a country estate that would rival those of wealthy white millionaires. In 1913, she traveled to Europe, visiting Paris, Monte Carlo, and the French Riviera. She studied architecture and interior design, met with art dealers and furniture makers, and gathered inspiration for the residence she planned to build. The following year, she purchased property in Irvington, on Hudson, New York, a village about 20 miles north of Manhattan, along the Hudson River. The area was home to affluent white families and known for its exclusivity. No black families lived there at the time. Walker paid approximately $27,000 for 4.5 acres of land with sweeping river views. She commissioned Vertner Tandy, one of the first registered black architects in New York State, to design the mansion. A graduate of Tuskegee Institute who had studied at Cornell University, Tandy had designed churches, schools, and residences for black clients across the Northeast. For Walker, he conceived an Italian Renaissance style villa that would signal black wealth, refinement, and permanence. Tandy's plans called for a 34-room mansion spanning roughly 20,000 square feet across 3 floors. The exterior featured cream-colored stucco walls, a red tile roof, and ornamental details inspired by the villas Walker had admired in Europe. Construction began in 1916 with an initial budget of around $150,000, though the final cost would rise far beyond that estimate. Walker supervised the project closely, traveling from Indianapolis to review progress and make decisions about materials, finishes, and layout. She demanded excellence in every detail. The design included a dramatic 2-story entrance hall with marble floors and a sweeping grand staircase. The music room was large enough to house a pipe organ and host formal performances. A spacious library would contain her expanding collection of books on business, history, and black culture. The dining room was built to seat 24 guests at a single table. She ordered custom furniture from European manufacturers, acquired Persian rugs and Flemish tapestries, and selected oil paintings that reflected both European artistry and African heritage. She commissioned portraits of herself and her family, and actively sought works by black artists whenever possible. The grounds received equal attention. Landscape architects designed formal gardens with terraced lawns descending toward the Hudson River. Stone pathways wound through plantings of roses, peonies, and hydrangeas. A reflecting pool captured the changing sky. The estate included a garage for her automobiles, a greenhouse for year-round cultivation, and staff quarters for the employees who would maintain the property. Walker planned to employ a full-time household staff that included a housekeeper, cook, maids, gardeners, and a chauffeur, many of whom would live on the estate. Her daughter, Lilia, played a central role in planning the household. Lilia, later known as Alelia Walker, had grown up within the business and understood her mother's vision. Together, they decided the mansion would serve not merely as a residence, but as a cultural and strategic center for black leaders, artists, and intellectuals. It would provide a private space for gatherings, planning sessions, and celebrations beyond the scrutiny of a segregated society. Construction proceeded more slowly than expected due to material shortages and labor complications, especially after the United States entered World War I in 1917. Walker used the delays to refine the design. She requested a solarium to maximize river views, additional bathrooms and closets, and expanded landscaping plans. She studied horticulture and selected plants that would bloom throughout the seasons, imagining garden parties where black society could gather in surroundings equal to any estate in the region. By 1918, the mansion was nearing completion. Walker named the estate Villa Luaro, a name inspired by her daughter's name and family heritage, giving the property a European tone and distinct identity. At 50 years old, she moved into a residence that stood as a declaration of achievement. completed in 1918 at a cost exceeding $250,000. The mansion was the most expensive home ever purchased by a Black American at that time. It rose 3 stories high with a red tile roof, cream stucco facade, carved stone balustrades, arched windows, and decorative ironwork. Massive wooden doors, imported from Italy, opened into a breathtaking entrance hall paved in black and white marble tiles. The ceiling soared approximately 20 feet overhead, accented with gold leaf details, while crystal chandeliers illuminated the space. A hand-carved mahogany banister guided visitors up the grand staircase. The music room occupied the entire east wing of the first floor, measuring roughly 40 by 30 feet with 18-foot ceilings. A pipe organ commissioned from the Este Organ Company of Vermont dominated one wall, accompanied by a Steinway grand piano. The space could seat 60 guests for recitals and performances. The library featured floor-to-ceiling built-in shelves, a rolling ladder, leather chairs, and reading lamps, forming an intimate intellectual retreat within a home designed to symbolize triumph, discipline, and vision. Villa Luaro stood not only as proof of personal success, but as a visible challenge to racial barriers. A structure that declared permanence, prosperity, and cultural leadership along the banks of the Hudson River. The room also displayed Madam C. J. Walker's growing collection of African art and artifacts, many acquired during her travels. These pieces reflected her pride in African heritage and her desire to surround herself with symbols of cultural identity. The formal dining room seated 24 guests at a custom-made table. Chairs upholstered in silk damask lined its length, and a 12-foot sideboard stretched across one wall. Crystal and fine china filled built-in cabinets, and silver serving pieces bore Walker's monogram. The room opened onto a terrace overlooking the Hudson River, allowing guests to step outside and view the sweeping landscape. Walker's private suite occupied much of the second floor. Her bedroom featured a 4-poster bed draped in silk hangings. An adjoining sitting room provided space for private meetings and correspondence. Her bathroom included a marble bathtub, a separate shower, and floor-to-ceiling mirrors. A spacious dressing room held her extensive wardrobe of gowns, day dresses, coats, and accessories. She employed a personal maid to maintain her clothing and jewelry. The second floor also included 6 additional bedrooms, each with a private bathroom for overnight guests and family members. Her daughter, Alelia Walker, maintained her own suite during visits. The third floor housed staff quarters and storage areas. 8 bedrooms accommodated live-in servants, and a large attic stored trunks and seasonal items. The basement contained the mansion's mechanical systems. A coal-fired boiler provided heat through radiators in every room. The kitchen occupied a large section of the lower level and featured industrial-sized stoves and ovens capable of preparing meals for large gatherings. Refrigeration units preserved food, and a dumbwaiter transported dishes directly to the dining room above. A wine cellar stored bottles from Europe and California. Walker herself drank little alcohol, but she served wine at formal dinners. A laundry room equipped with commercial washing machines and drying racks allowed staff to maintain linens and garments, pressing them with heavy irons heated on stoves. The garage held 3 automobiles. Walker owned a custom electric vehicle built by the Detroit Electric Car Company, featuring mahogany interior trim and leather seats. She preferred the electric car for local travel because it was quiet and required no hand crank starting. 2 gasoline-powered vehicles were used for longer journeys. A chauffeur maintained the cars and drove her when needed. The grounds demanded constant care. 2 full-time gardeners tended the terraced lawns descending toward the river. Formal gardens featured geometric beds planted with roses, peonies, hydrangeas, and seasonal flowers. Stone pathways connected separate garden spaces, and a reflecting pool near the house mirrored the sky. A greenhouse enabled year-round cultivation of orchids and tropical plants. Fresh floral arrangements appeared throughout the house, replaced daily by staff. A vegetable garden supplied produce for the kitchen. Depending on the season, the estate employed between 12 and 15 staff members. A head housekeeper supervised cleaning, laundry, and daily operations. The cook planned menus and prepared meals. 2 maids maintained rooms and served at formal dinners. Gardeners reported to a head groundskeeper responsible for planting schedules and maintenance. The chauffeur also handled minor repairs around the property. A personal secretary managed Walker's correspondence and appointments. She paid her employees above standard wages and believed strongly in fair compensation. Many staff members were black, though some positions were held by white workers. The mansion incorporated modern technology for its time. A telephone system with extensions allowed communication between rooms and direct calls to New York City. Electric lighting illuminated every space, a luxury in 1918. Central heating, indoor plumbing in every bathroom, and advanced ventilation systems ensured comfort and efficiency. Walker invested heavily in technology that improved daily life. She furnished Villa Leworo with items acquired during her European travels. French armchairs in silk brocade, Italian marble, top tables, English antique cabinets, and Persian rugs covering hardwood floors. Oil paintings in gilded frames adorned the walls, some depicting European landscapes, and others African subjects. She commissioned formal portraits of herself, including one that portrayed her seated in an elegant gown with a dignified, confident expression. That portrait hung prominently in the entrance hall, greeting every visitor. Walker moved into Villa Leworo in the summer of 1918 at the age of 50. She had been born on a Louisiana plantation to formerly enslaved parents and had once earned $1.50 a day as a washerwoman. Now she lived in a mansion rivaling the estates of families such as the Vanderbilts and Rockefellers. Her success demonstrated that a black woman could build immense wealth and live in extraordinary splendor. Despite her accomplishments, acceptance from white society did not follow. The Irvington Country Club, whose membership included affluent white families along the Hudson River, rejected her application without explanation. The local yacht club also denied her membership, as did a women's social club that organized charity events. White neighbors circulated petitions claiming that property values would decline and expressing concern that her presence might encourage other wealthy black families to move into the area. Local newspapers published coverage that questioned whether such luxury was appropriate for a black woman and implied that her wealth was unusual or suspect. Walker refused to retreat. She had purchased her property legally and built her home with her own resources. She remained determined to live there with dignity. Instead of withdrawing, she expanded her public presence by hosting events that celebrated black achievement. prominent figures visited Villa Luoro. W. E. B. Du Bois attended dinners. Although Booker T. Washington had died in 1915, Walker had supported his work at Tuskegee Institute, and she continued to back initiatives aligned with educational advancement. Leaders such as James Weldon Johnson and Mary McLeod Bethune gathered at the estate. These meetings addressed issues such as the Great Migration, racial violence, and strategies for combating segregation and discrimination. Villa Luoro evolved into a hub of activism. Walker donated thousands of dollars to the NAACP, supported the National Association of Colored Women, funded scholarships, and contributed to orphanages and homes serving Black communities. The estate amplified her philanthropic reach and provided a setting for coordinated action. She also hosted elegant social gatherings that showcased Black culture and refinement. Guests dined on gold-rimmed china, drank from crystal goblets, and listened to music in the Grand Music Room. These events demonstrated that Black Americans could create spaces of sophistication equal to any in white society. As the Harlem Renaissance began to flourish, Walker supported artists and intellectuals by offering patronage and exposure. Although Langston Hughes would visit the estate after her death, other writers and performers attended during her lifetime. She commissioned musicians, purchased artwork from Black artists, and displayed it prominently throughout her home. Villa Luoro stood not only as a residence of extraordinary luxury, but as a deliberate statement of cultural pride, economic power, and unwavering resolve. She believed that supporting Black culture was just as important as building Black businesses. The gatherings at Villa Luoro attracted attention beyond the Black community. Some white progressives and liberals sought invitations, curious about the woman who had built such extraordinary wealth. Madam C.J. Walker remained selective about which white visitors she welcomed. She refused to be treated as a spectacle or to perform success for entertainment. At the same time, she cultivated relationships with white allies who genuinely supported civil rights and racial equality. Those connections occasionally provided political influence when needed. Her daughter, Alelia Walker, approached the mansion differently. While her mother used Villa Luoro primarily as a center for political strategy and cultural advancement, Alelia embraced it as a vibrant social space. She hosted jazz parties that lasted until dawn and invited younger artists and creative thinkers who challenged convention. Entertainment and activism often overlapped, and the gatherings became legendary within Black society. Invitations were highly coveted. Attendance signaled entry into the highest circles of Black America. The mansion evolved into a symbol of possibility, proof that achievement on such a scale was attainable. Despite the elegance within its walls, white residents of Irvington never accepted Walker's presence. Social clubs remained close to her. Neighbors avoided acknowledging her in public. When she drove through town in her electric car, many residents deliberately turned away. Their children were instructed not to interact with Black children who visited the estate. Local churches did not welcome her attendance, forcing her to travel to Harlem or Manhattan to worship. The rejection was painful despite her public confidence. She had believed that wealth, refinement, and impeccable conduct would eventually command respect. She discovered that racial barriers were stronger than financial success. Her bank account could not override prejudice. In 1919, Her health began to decline. She had suffered from high blood pressure for years, and doctors repeatedly urged her to slow down. She ignored their advice. The company required constant oversight. The factory in Indianapolis demanded supervision. Walker agents across the country needed guidance, and competitors were attempting to replicate her formulas and erode her market share. Her schedule remained relentless. She traveled constantly, often working 16-hour days and sleeping poorly. Her condition worsened as hypertension damaged her kidneys. By April 1919, physicians insisted that she stop working. Kidney failure had advanced, and treatment options were limited. She returned to Villa Luaro and attempted to rest. Yet she continued managing business matters from her bedroom. Letters were dictated to her secretary. Advisors visited the estate for consultations. Even as her strength diminished, her mind remained focused on expansion and strategy. During her final weeks, she was surrounded by family. Alelia stayed at the mansion to care for her mother. Her adopted granddaughter, May, was also present. Friends visited to pay their respects and found her physically weakened, but mentally sharp. She discussed the future of the company and the livelihoods of thousands of women who depended on it. She worried about sustaining the vision she had created. She finalized instructions regarding her estate. A substantial portion of future company profits was designated for charitable causes. She directed funds to the NAACP, Tuskegee Institute, orphanages, and homes serving Black communities. She ensured that her wealth would continue advancing racial progress after her death. Alelia inherited Villa Luaro along with a significant trust, and the company's management was entrusted to trained executives. On May 25, 1919, Madam C. J. Walker died at Villa Luaro at the age of 51. The official cause was complications from hypertension and kidney failure. Her body was prepared for viewing, and thousands sought to honor her. The funeral was held at the estate on May 28. The grounds filled with mourners, including Walker agents who traveled from across the country, dressed in their finest attire. Inside the music room, her casket rested among flowers while the pipe organ played hymns. The main eulogy was delivered by Adam Clayton Powell, SAR, of the Abyssinian Baptist Church in Harlem. He praised her determination, philanthropy, and vision. He emphasized that she had built institutions designed to endure beyond her lifetime and had demonstrated the intellectual and entrepreneurial power of Black women. After the service, her body was transported to Woodlawn Cemetery in the Bronx, where she was buried in a plot she had purchased. Her grave was marked by a simple headstone bearing her name and dates, reflecting her preference for substance over spectacle. White newspapers offered restrained coverage of her death, noting her wealth and business success, with little recognition of her broader impact. Black newspapers, such as the Chicago Defender and the Pittsburgh Courier, devoted extensive front-page coverage, celebrating her as one of the greatest business leaders Black America had produced. They chronicled her philanthropy, activism, and the opportunities she had created for thousands of women. Following her passing, the Madam C. J. Walker Manufacturing Company continued under professional management. Production and distribution remained steady, though the company never fully replicated the dynamic expansion driven by her personal leadership. Alelia Walker Robinson inherited Villa Luaro at 34. Having grown up within her mother's empire, she now directed the estate and a considerable fortune. Aurelia transformed the mansion into a cultural salon during the height of the Harlem Renaissance. She hosted increasingly elaborate gatherings, inviting poets, musicians, and artists who defined a generation. Langston Hughes became a frequent visitor, as did County Cullen and Zora Neale Hurston. White patrons of black art, including Carl Van Vechten, also attended. The parties of the 1920s at Villa Luoro gained legendary status. Jazz echoed through the music room, and guests danced beneath crystal chandeliers in the grand entrance hall. The mansion that had once symbolized one woman's triumph over adversity evolved into a beacon of artistic freedom and cultural expression, continuing to embody the bold vision of its original builder. Alcohol flowed freely despite prohibition. The mansion that Madam C.J. Walker had built as a symbol of black achievement and dignity slowly gained a reputation for hedonistic excess. Her daughter Aurelia Walker did not share her mother's intense political commitments. She donated to causes when asked, but she was not an activist in the mold of her mother. She was a socialite who loved art, music, fashion, and celebration. Some critics accused her of squandering her mother's legacy, while others argued that celebrating black culture through creativity and elegance was its own powerful form of progress during the Harlem Renaissance. Aurelia also faced financial pressures her mother had never experienced. Maintaining Villa Luoro required enormous expense. Staff salaries, property taxes, heating, repairs, and general upkeep consumed thousands of dollars each month. When the Great Depression began in 1929, those costs became crushing. Income from the Walker Company declined as sales dropped. Many former Walker agents lost customers as working-class black women struggled to afford even basic necessities. The company survived, but profits shrank dramatically. To survive financially, Aurelia began renting out parts of Villa Luoro. The third-floor staff quarters were converted into apartments. The greenhouse and outbuildings were leased. Rooms on the second floor were rented to long-term boarders. The private estate gradually transformed into a commercial property. By the early 1930s, Aurelia could no longer afford to live there full-time. She spent most of her time at her Harlem townhouse, and the Irvington mansion became a weekend retreat. Staff was reduced to a skeleton crew. Gardens grew wild. Once vibrant rooms stood empty and silent. On August 9, 1931, Aurelia Walker died suddenly from a cerebral hemorrhage while attending a birthday party in Long Branch, New Jersey. She was only 46 years old. Her death shocked the Harlem community. Thousands attended her funeral at Abyssinian Baptist Church. Poet Langston Hughes wrote a tribute in her honor. The funeral procession stretched for blocks, reflecting the cultural influence she had wielded. Her death created an immediate financial crisis. She had accumulated debts exceeding 100,000, and her estate could not cover them. Her daughter, May, inherited Villa Luoro, but lacked both the resources and the desire to maintain such an enormous property. In 1932, the mansion went into foreclosure and was sold at auction for approximately $47,000, a fraction of its original cost of more than $250,000. The Irvington Convalescent Home purchased the estate and converted it into a private nursing facility. The music room became a common area. The grand dining room served institutional meals. Bedrooms were subdivided. The pipe organ was removed and sold. Much of the original furniture was auctioned away. The mansion, that once symbolized black wealth and aspiration, became an anonymous medical institution. Most residents had no idea whose home they occupied. For decades, Villa Lewaro functioned as a nursing home, while the building slowly deteriorated. Maintenance was delayed. The roof leaked. Windows cracked and remained unrepaired. Terrace gardens disappeared under weeds. The reflecting pool crumbled and filled with debris. By the late 1960s, amid the civil rights movement, preservationists began recognizing the mansion's historical importance. Scholars rediscovered Madame C.J. Walker's story and documented her achievements. Villa Lewaro appeared in books and articles about Black entrepreneurship and the Harlem Renaissance, yet recognition did not immediately bring restoration funding. The nursing home closed in 1973, and the property sat vacant for years. Vandals broke windows. Water damage spread. Plaster fell from ceilings. Demolition seemed likely. In 1976, Harold Dolly Jr., a black investment banker from New Orleans, purchased the mansion for around $60,000. He intended to restore and preserve it. He replaced the roof, repaired plumbing and electrical systems, and stabilized the structure. Full restoration, however, exceeded his financial capacity. In 1981, Villa Lewaro was designated a National Historic Landmark, officially recognizing its significance in American history. The designation brought honor, but not the funds required for complete restoration. The mansion remained privately owned and largely inaccessible to the public. Dolly continued gradual improvements, researching the original interior design and attempting to recapture Walker's vision. He tracked down some original furnishings sold decades earlier and restored the marble floors and grand staircase. Interest in Walker's legacy continued to grow through the 1990s and 2000s. The Madame C.J. Walker Manufacturing Company, building in Indianapolis, was preserved and converted into a cultural center. Her Indianapolis home became a museum. Yet Villa Lewaro, the crown jewel of her achievements, remained relatively unknown to the wider public. In 2012, Family Archives renewed efforts to raise awareness. Alelia Bundles, Walker's great-granddaughter and biographer, worked tirelessly to share her ancestors' story through books, lectures. In 2014, the National Trust for Historic Preservation listed Villa Lewaro as one of America's 11 most endangered historic places. The designation brought national attention and renewed preservation efforts. In 2018, new owners committed to completing a full restoration aimed at returning the mansion to its original 1918 appearance. Architects studied the plans of Vertner Tandy. Historians examined photographs and documents from Walker's era. Craftsmen began repairing damaged architectural details and restoring decorative elements. The entrance hall regained its grandeur. The grounds were replanted according to original landscape designs. The restoration continues with the goal of opening Villa Lewaro to the public as a museum and educational center. Visitors will walk through rooms where Walker entertained black leaders and white allies, where artists of the Harlem Renaissance gathered, and where a woman who rose from poverty built a monument to possibility. Walker's influence extended far beyond her mansion. At the height of her company's success, she employed between 20,000 and 40,000 agents. These women sold products, demonstrated techniques, recruited others, and earned income that brought independence and dignity. For many, it was the first time they controlled their own economic future. The Walker system offered more than employment. It provided education in business skills, customer service, money management, and self-presentation. Walker insisted that her agents dress professionally, speak clearly, and carry themselves with confidence. She believed every agent represented the race. Their success challenged racist assumptions. Their professionalism demanded respect. Agents learned how to approach customers confidently, demonstrate products effectively, manage inventory, track income, and build lasting client relationships. They were taught to stand straight, maintain eye contact, and speak with assurance. These lessons extended beyond sales. They cultivated self-worth in a society determined to deny it. Many agents transformed their communities. Top performers earned substantial incomes, purchased homes, sent children to college, invested in property, and launched additional businesses. Walker encouraged this broader entrepreneurship. She wanted her agents to think expansively about their futures. Annual conventions brought agents together to exchange ideas, celebrate achievements, and reinforce a shared vision of economic independence and racial pride. Awards honored excellence. Prominent speakers inspired ambition. These gatherings also carried political weight. Walker encouraged involvement in civil rights organizations, such as the NAACP, and urged civic participation, after women gained suffrage in 1920. She framed economic success as a foundation for political power. Her philosophy blended capitalism with racial uplift, drawing both admiration and criticism. W.E.B. Du Bois respected her achievements, but feared that an emphasis on business might distract from urgent demands for legal equality. Booker T. Washington championed economic self-reliance as the path to advancement, and Walker's success seemed to validate that approach. Walker herself refused to choose between economic power and civil rights. She demonstrated that wealth creation and activism could advance together, forming a legacy that continues to shape American history. She built businesses and supported civil rights activism at the same time. Madam C.J. Walker accumulated significant wealth and donated generously to organizations fighting for equality. She believed economic power and political power were inseparable, and that Black Americans needed both to secure lasting freedom and respect. Walker's advertising strategies broke new ground in American business. She was among the first entrepreneurs to use before and after photographs in marketing. Her agents carried images showing women with damaged hair before, using Walker products, and healthy hair afterward. These visuals offered clear, persuasive proof of effectiveness. She also relied heavily on testimonials. Satisfied customers wrote letters describing their experiences, and these testimonials appeared in advertisements in Black newspapers, building trust and credibility within the community. Walker's own image became central to her brand. Her photograph appeared on product packaging, and advertisements highlighted her life story, tracing her journey from poverty as Sarah Breedlove to success as Madame C.J. Walker. She transformed herself into a living symbol of possibility. Her personal branding strategy was revolutionary in the early 20th century. When few companies built their identity around a founder's biography, she understood she was selling more than hair care. She was selling aspiration, dignity, and hope. Debates about hair straightening never fully disappeared. Marcus Garvey criticized Black women who straightened their hair, arguing that the practice reflected internalized racism and rejection of African features. Supporters of Walker countered that her system emphasized hair health and self determination rather than assimilation. Straightened hair was often easier to manage, and style in professional environments that judged black women harshly. The controversy reflected deeper tensions about identity, respectability, and cultural pride. Walker navigated these tensions by emphasizing choice. Her products provided options. Women could decide how they wanted to present themselves, with health and control as the priority. Her philanthropy mirrored her values. She donated to institutions promoting education and self-improvement, including the Tuskegee Institute and the Palmer Memorial Institute. She funded scholarships for black college students and supported the NAACP in its anti-lynching campaigns. During the years when thousands of black Americans were victims of racial terror, she contributed money for investigations and legal challenges and used her public platform to condemn violence. Walker also supported homes for the elderly, orphanages, black churches, and hospitals that treated patients denied care elsewhere. Her giving was strategic. She invested in institutions that strengthened black communities structurally and economically. In 1912, she pledged $1,000 to a YMCA building project in Indianapolis, on the condition that the local black community raise an additional $4,000. The community met the challenge, and the project moved forward. Her matching gift strategy encouraged collective responsibility and multiplied the impact of her wealth. In 1917, she participated in organizing efforts for a silent protest march against racial violence in New York. She offered to fund transportation for participants. On July 28, 1917, approximately 10,000 black Americans marched silently down Fifth Avenue, carrying signs condemning lynching and discrimination. Her financial support helped make the demonstration possible. Walker used her business network for political mobilization. She encouraged her agents to register voters and engage in civic life. After the 19th Amendment granted women the right to vote in 1920, she urged black women to exercise that right immediately. She understood that political influence required organization, participation, and unity. Her relationship with white society was complex. She formed friendships with white progressives who supported racial equality and collaborated with them on philanthropic initiatives. Some attended events at her estate, Villa Luoro. These alliances were genuine yet strategic. She recognized that racial progress required allies beyond the black community. At the same time, she understood that many white Americans, regardless of status or education, continued to view her as inferior because of her race. Exclusion from social clubs in Irvington wounded her deeply. She had invested enormous resources into creating a home equal to those of white millionaires. She traveled to Europe, collected art, and mastered elite social customs. Despite these efforts, many white neighbors refused to treat her as an equal. Some journalists responded with patronizing praise, calling her an exceptional Negro, a label that applauded her success while reinforcing stereotypes about black inferiority. Walker recognized the condescension, but continued engaging with the press, because publicity expanded her reach and strengthened her business. She also encountered criticism within segments of the black elite. Some light-skinned professionals distanced themselves from darker-skinned entrepreneurs like Walker and dismissed the hair care industry as too closely tied to working-class black women. Walker rejected such attitudes. She openly embraced her dark skin and humble origins. She took pride in serving ordinary black women and refused to apologize for building wealth through their needs. This stance strengthened her support among working class communities, even as some elites remained ambivalent. She navigated internal divisions by focusing on enterprise and philanthropy, rather than seeking approval from any exclusive circle. Health challenges emerged earlier than many realized. By 1917, she was suffering from severe hypertension. Doctors repeatedly urged her to reduce stress and limit her workload. She attempted to follow their advice, but struggled to step back. Competitors copied her formulas and undercut prices. Continuous innovation was necessary to protect market share. She also felt responsibility toward the thousands of women whose livelihoods depended on the Walker Company. She hired managers and delegated authority, yet found it difficult to relinquish control. She had built the enterprise from nothing and understood every aspect intimately. The strain persisted. Her blood pressure remained dangerously high, causing headaches and dizziness. By 1918, her kidneys showed signs of serious damage. At the time, medical treatment options were limited. Physicians prescribed rest and dietary adjustments, but these measures offered little relief. Aware that her time was limited, Walker spent her final year preparing for the future. She promoted trusted executives, documented procedures, and detailed product formulas and quality standards to ensure continuity. She devoted careful attention to estate planning. She structured her will so that 2/3 of future company profits would go to charitable causes. She specified which institutions would receive funding and how the money should be used. Her final actions reflected the philosophy that had guided her life. Wealth was a tool for empowerment. Business success carried social responsibility. Economic advancement and civil rights activism were not opposing paths, but complementary forces in the struggle for equality. She dedicated her wealth to funding education, supporting civil rights work, and assisting the elderly and orphaned. Her final months at Villa Lauro were difficult. Walker was confined to bed most days, unable to walk without assistance. Struggling to breathe and experiencing deteriorating vision, yet her mind remained sharp. She continued to receive visitors and discuss business matters. Her daughter, Alelia, stayed at the mansion to care for her. Navigating a complex relationship shaped by love and living in Walker's shadow. Alelia had worked in the business since childhood, but never shared Walker's passion for enterprise, instead enjoying luxury and entertainment. Walker, devoted to building businesses and supporting causes. Worried about the future of her company, her charitable commitments, and the preservation of Villa Lauro, she expressed these concerns to close associates while preparing for the inevitable. Walker passed away on May 25, 1920, just months after women gained the right to vote through the 19th Amendment, which she had supported. She had encouraged her agents to prepare for political participation, though she did not live to vote herself. Her funeral at Villa Lauro became a major event in Black America. Mourners traveled from across the country. Walker agents came in their finest attire to honor the woman who had transformed their lives. Civil rights leaders eulogized her as a symbol of Black capability and determination, highlighting her proof that Black women could succeed at the highest levels of business. Black newspapers, such as the Chicago Defender and the Pittsburgh Courier, devoted extensive coverage to her legacy, celebrating her achievements and the wealth she created despite extraordinary obstacles. White newspapers, including the New York Times, offered more modest coverage, focusing on her business success, but ignoring the broader social and cultural significance of her accomplishments. Walker was buried at Woodlawn Cemetery among notable Americans, including industrialists, politicians, and cultural figures. She had purchased her plot in advance, ensuring a prestigious resting place. Her grave marker was simple, bearing only her name and dates, reflecting her lack of interest in elaborate memorials. The Madam C.J. Walker Manufacturing Company continued operating for decades after her death. It remained profitable through the 1920s, despite rising competition, though the Great Depression significantly impacted sales. By the 1950s and 1960s, shifts in beauty standards and new competitors eroded the company's market position, as major corporations began marketing directly to black consumers. The company ceased manufacturing operations in 1985, and the brand was sold to a firm producing a limited line of products. Today, Walker's beauty culture products remain available, though the business bears little resemblance to her original enterprise. The Indianapolis factory building was preserved as the Madam Walker Legacy Center, housing a theater, community spaces, and exhibits about her life. Her Indianapolis home was also preserved as a museum, attracting visitors interested in Black history and entrepreneurship. Walker's story has been recounted in numerous books, documentaries, and educational programs. Her great-great-granddaughter, Alelia Bundles, became a journalist and biographer, researching the family history extensively. Bundles' work brought renewed attention to Walker's achievements, emphasizing that her triumphs extended beyond personal success to victories for all Black women who followed. Walker fundamentally changed what was possible for Black women in America. Before her, few Black women controlled significant wealth, with most employed in domestic service, agricultural labor, or other low-wage work. Walker demonstrated that Black women could build businesses, accumulate capital, and compete in the marketplace. Her success inspired generations of Black entrepreneurs, with thousands of Black women founding businesses in the decades following her death, often citing her as a model. Walker reshaped perceptions of Black women, emphasizing beauty, dignity, and self-respect. She insisted that they deserved to look and feel their best, challenging a society that consistently denigrated Black appearance. Her economic model provided a blueprint for direct sales businesses, with independent agents earning commissions. Companies such as Avon and Tupperware later adopted similar models. Walker pioneered this approach in the Black community, proving it could generate substantial wealth. Her philanthropy set a standard for other successful Black Americans. She demonstrated that wealth carried obligations, funding education, supporting civil rights, and assisting the less fortunate. This tradition of giving became central to Black wealth building culture, influencing generations of entrepreneurs and community leaders. Debates Walker sparked about hair, beauty, and identity continue today, with movements challenging assumptions about professionalism and appearance. Walker's business philosophy supported choice and empowerment, emphasizing autonomy and self-determination. Villa Laro reflects the precarious nature of Black wealth in America. Walker built a magnificent estate through her labor and vision, yet within 12 years of her death, it had been lost to creditors and repurposed. Aurelia lacked her mother's discipline and business acumen. And the Great Depression destroyed many fortunes, highlighting how systemic barriers, limited access to capital, and wealth transfer complications have historically threatened the continuity of Black wealth. Walker's life demonstrates both the possibilities of Black wealth creation and the challenges of preserving it. The restoration of Villa Laro in the 21st century represents historical justice. The mansion that white society once rejected is now recognized as a national treasure. It stands as a testament to Walker's pioneering achievements, her refusal to accept imposed limits, and her role in expanding what Black Americans could accomplish. When restoration is complete and the mansion opens to the public, visitors will encounter the full story of Walker's life. From her birth into poverty, her struggles as a widowed washerwoman, to her entrepreneurial breakthroughs and rise to wealth. They will see the mansion she built, understand the racial and social barriers she confronted, and witness the institutions she created to serve the Black community. Aurelia Bundles has worked for decades to ensure Walker's story reaches contemporary audiences through books, documentaries, and lectures. Walker's achievements were not solely personal triumphs, they were victories for all Black women who came after. Every Black woman entrepreneur, business owner, and economic agent owes a part of her path to Walker's legacy. In 2020, a Netflix limited series introduced her story to millions, inspiring young Black women by showing that a century ago, a woman who looked like them had built an empire. The series revitalized interest in Walker, boosting book sales, museum visits, and social media discussion about her achievements. Walker's legacy resonates strongly in movements like Black Lives Matter, illustrating that wealth and success do not shield individuals from systemic racism. Her philosophy, that economic independence, dignity, and community responsibility are inseparable, continues to guide Black entrepreneurship. She invested in her agents' education, confidence, and visibility, teaching them that controlling their labor and income equates to freedom and power. Walker understood that representation matters, and that seeing someone who looks like oneself succeed makes success attainable. Her unspoken motto was clear: Black women deserve economic independence, dignity, and respect. They should control their labor, benefit from their work, support one another, and build institutions serving their communities. They should pursue ambition and success unapologetically. Walker defied the limitations society sought to impose, rejected confinement to domestic work, and disproved assumptions about Black women's business acumen. Villa Laro embodies Walker's audacity and determination. The mansion is a statement. A Black woman born on a plantation built a palace, claiming space in an exclusive white community. Though white neighbors denied her social acceptance, they could not deny the magnitude of her achievement. The house still stands on its hillside, overlooking the Hudson River, its cream stucco walls and red tile roof visible from the water. Passersby see the Italian Renaissance villa and recognize that it was built by the first female self-made millionaire in American history. Villa Laro, once shocking to white society, is now celebrated as a symbol of determination, dignity, and the refusal to be constrained by prejudice. Sarah Breedlove began life with nothing and became Madam C.J. Walker, owner of an empire and a palace. Her wealth did not buy societal acceptance, but it created institutions, employed thousands, and inspired millions. Villa Laro stands as enduring proof that one woman's ambition and labor could redefine what was possible for Black women in America, leaving a legacy for every generation that followed.